Jeremy, coming into this series, if I had asked you what the percentage chance of a likely New Zealand win was, what do you think you would have given me?
Slim chance. If I gazed backwards over the past, 1955-56 was the first tour of India. We've only had 2 wins during that period, so very slim chance would be. So I'd be under 5%.
I mean, it's incredible that so quickly that changed. The 46, innings, and then the 400 that followed it. There was a point at which this looked like it was going to be a massive victory for New Zealand, but in the end, they bowled a team out for 46 and it had a 350-run lead, and still, in classic New Zealand style, had to earn the victory.
They did, and it just does show you that. It's still a good Indian side. I think people, might be looking at this and saying, all right, we've found a terrific New Zealand side, or they've unearthed themselves and we didn't anticipate it. It's not that. And that's why I wouldn't get too excited about this. I just think India are still a very, very strong side, and they will be very, very difficult in Pune and also in Wankhede as well. So let's just wait and see. Not get too excited. Keep working hard as if you're a player.
And just from a New Zealand point of view, you said not get too excited, and that makes sense. I mean, it's the first test in the series. We've seen India lose the first test a few times and still storm back into these series again, and Pune might spin a lot more, so that will change the way that New Zealand go about it. But we were talking on I was going to say on the morning of the first day, but I suppose throughout the first day, because we had nothing else to do on the first day, we were talking about Watling and Taylor and Bolt and Wagner and all these players moving on, and Southey has obviously been in conversation quite a bit, and he's let go of the captaincy. All those things considered, even if they got the best of the conditions, it's still a very, very big moment for New Zealand cricket, because I think we were all trying to work out if they were in transition or if they were in maybe had the handbrake on.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. What you're really asking me is, where are New Zealand at relative to their own past? And there's no doubt this side is learning as they go along. Even players like Mitchell, who you would regard now as quite a steady pick and selection in the side, he's only had 25 test matches. So, we aren't the experienced group that we used to be. That's mainly because of the selection policies of someone like Gary Stead, who's the coach as well and selector, who has been quite a conservative selector. And because we don't have huge numbers of players to select for international cricket, then he just keeps believing we've got the best ones we've got. Let's give them chance after chance, and they will come through in the end. And it's kind of a policy that sort of worked for a while, but then you get the aging component coming in, and then you start asking questions about who's coming through. And so, while you mentioned Wagner and Bolt gone, we've found another, I think, that is saying, yes, I have some potential here, and we quite like the look of O'Rourke. So while we celebrate that, let's not get too over the top about it, because there are still things he can be better at. I like the look of young Ben Sears, and I'm a bit disappointed he's been injured with a knee injury and won't be on this tour, because he would have got a game as well. He's faster than O'Rourke, and he swings it slightly out, right arm as well. So he is a player I think they could in tandem in the future would be very useful.
And I wonder, you talked about O'Rourke. Ratcharavindra is the other one. I'm very high on Ratcharavindra. And one of the reasons that I'm so high on him is because of how complete his batting is. There isn't an obvious weakness that myself as an analyst would be able to poke at the moment. And I just feel like he can play the short ball and he can play the moving ball. And if it's spinning, and he can reverse or he can use his feet. He just has so many different options. As a former test batter, it does feel like he's got everything he needs to be successful in the test arena.
Technically, technically, yes, he is already at 24, a fine player. And he is an attacking player as well, which New Zealanders don't tend to be. They tend to be defensively based, bat time, can play the shots, but they don't usually use them. A little bit like Kane. Kane, you only see them after a long time at the crease. Then you start saying, oh, he can play that stroke. Didn't realise that. But Ratchin is different than that. We see them come out before he's 20, and he gets on top of the bowling quite quickly. The other thing I think you haven't quite mentioned is his appetite. His appetite for runs. He doesn't just get to 100. I mean, his first century was a 200, wasn't it? Against a weakened South Africa side, you might say. But then here he got to 100 against India, and he wanted to go on as well. And so he got to 130 odd, I think, here. And finally got out, but he was 10th out. And he would have liked to have kept going. There's no doubt about that in my mind. So that's quite a nice skill set to have. The ability to play a wide range of bowling, and at the same time, if you get success, you keep going and you drive yourself on and on. My worry is, as I've said before, is that New Zealand might not be able to hold him quite as long as we might have.
I've got one final question for you. I asked you, before about how you felt and everything, and you gave a very cricket answer, proper former pro. You were talking about, they've got another test to come, and there's lots of that. Just from, you are the Gandalf of New Zealand cricket, as everyone is always referring to you as. You've been.
Come on.
Yeah, but
I haven't seen that movie right through, but that's okay. I know what you mean.
There's a book as well, I think. I would have thought you would have read the book. But, you've seen a lot of games. Where does this rank as one of the most unlikely victories in a country that's had a lot of incredibly unlikely victories? This has got to be pretty high.
Yes, it would be. Yes, it would be because of the conditions. And then I think, well, hang on a tick, what were the conditions that caused and brought about the game? And they were, in fact, New Zealand-like conditions, weren't they, in the first day? And that was the greatest part towards, I think, creating the victory. We had a good glance in the third innings of the match. What are Asian and what are Indian conditions? And we found that our bowlers still just struggle a bit, and particularly the spinners. We've traditionally selected 2 spinners and 2 seamers in Asia, and we've sometimes had some part-timers to go with the 2 major spinners, and New Zealanders selectors have continued to try a concerted spin formula when we go to Asia. And the trouble is that they're not quite capable either of bowling the pace they need to or the number of revolutions they impart on the ball. And so that results in less drift prior to pitching, and it's less turn when it collides with the surface. They also can't get it to drop with an overspin as well. So the things that you want to create as a spinner, they don't quite technically have at their disposal. So we really desperately need, I think, in New Zealand to require a very organised pathway and system to somehow, start our spinners into and get them there and get them in concert with good spin bowlers and coaches and so on, even if they have to go overseas. We've got Rangana Herath at the moment, who seems to be alongside the New. I'm delighted that he's there and working with someone, like Ajaz Patel. But we need something more in New Zealand so that we've got the future spinners coming through. And we need to do that. If we're not, we've got to play a spinner. We can't keep on, just the same way as India in the last 5 or 6 years. You'd know more than I would about that. But they've obviously wanted to get faster bowlers so that they can take them to South Africa and New Zealand and to England. And they can be, competitive because they have, and they're fast bowlers now, they've built up some depth. Yes, you need resources, and that's where the difficulty is, of course, in New Zealand and a lot of the lesser, countries that just don't have the money to attract the sorts of things that you want. So that's a bit of a pity, but that's what we need to do, there's no doubt about that, to make us a better all-round side.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.